What's up, Packer fans? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Today, I'm going to talk about what seems to be one of the more divisive topics on the entirety of the Green Bay Packers, and that is quarterback Jordan Love, the former first-round pick. It almost seems like people are ingrained in their beliefs, and it's almost political at this point. Either Jordan Love was a stupid decision from the beginning and is a bust and will always be a bust, or he could still be the future quarterback of the Packers, or there's still hope within Jordan Love, and everyone seems to be in their own camp and not budging a ton. Had the opportunity to kind of go through a progress report, and like I said before, we'll find a little bit more when training camp and preseason comes along. I still think if you were doing a progress report as of today, I don't think it's trending in the right direction. That's not a be-all end-all. That's not to say that it can't get better. As mentioned in my OTA reports, he had a couple really nice 2-minute drills to sort of, wrap up the OTA and minicamp sessions. So there's still signs there from time to time with Jordan Love. I think everyone would like to see him be further along than what he is. I'm sure Jordan would like that. I'm sure the Packers would like that. I'm sure the fans would like that. But either way, he still represents this semi-interesting lottery ticket that you still don't know what the payoff is going to be. And the lottery ticket, as I mentioned in my progress report, right? The lottery ticket odds every day sort of come down, right? The odds that it pays off are less and less until he starts showing something more, and then maybe you see those odds swing in the other favor. But until he starts showing consistent football and being the same, almost dominant quarterback in practice day in and day out and shows out in preseason, every day that goes on that he doesn't do that, again, the odds of a payout become less and less, and it's getting harder and harder for Love to pay off in any sort of capacity, because it looks like Rodgers is going to play for the next couple of seasons, and we're already reaching the point where there's going to be a very difficult fifth-year option for Jordan Love that the Packers are going to have to decide upon. And even if they do pick it up, you've lost sort of some of those potential years where he's playing on a very cheap deal and you can add a bunch of talent around him and things like that. So there's a lot to get into here, but what I wanted to do today is sort of go back and look at the scouting report for Jordan Love. This is my specific scouting report. I went back as soon as he was drafted. I watched almost every snap from 2018. I watched every single snap from 2019, and I had a bunch of takeaways from all of that tape and sort of my full scouting report on what Jordan Love was, what he could potentially become, some of the really good things at Utah State, some of the really bad things at Utah State. And I figured today it might be worthwhile just sort of re-going over that to kind of sort of look back and remember, if you will, what was so intriguing about Jordan Love in the first place, why Brian Gutekunst and company saw what they saw, why they made the selection when they did. It's not to say that it's right. I'm not defending the pick. At the time, I still had major questions in regards to the pick. I don't think that there was a perfect timeline for Jordan Love to be drafted at that time. But I also understand that quarterback is the most important position in all of football. And if you think you found a guy that can play it at a very high level, I can always understand taking the risk because the reward is just so massive if it actually pays off for you. So without further ado, here were all of my notes from 2018 and 2019. I'm going to do 2018 first, 2019 second, and then we'll kind of recap at the end. In 2018, if you haven't had a chance, go back and watch Jordan Love in 2018. If you have any questions as to why Brian Gutekunst made the selection and moved up to get Jordan Love, just watch Jordan Love in 2018. There's a reason that some people were comparing some of his high-level play to Patrick Mahomes in 2018. And I went as far to say, if you go and watch the high-level tape of Patrick Mahomes in college and the high-level tape of Jordan Love in 2018, I think the flashes and even some of the consistencies of Jordan Love were better in 2018 from Jordan Love than they were in the peaks of Patrick Mahomes in college. Like that's why people were comparing them the way that they were. So if you've never had the opportunity to see that, definitely go and watch it, because the tape in 2018 is really, really fun. Now, it's not perfect. There were signs of some concerns. There were more concerns in 2019, which we'll get to, but the tape was also so fun to watch. And you pop that on, and if your team went out and drafted that guy, in some capacity, it's hard not to be excited just on what's on tape in 2018. So my first note after reviewing all the tape in 2018 was that he could absolutely make every throw. Now, that's not to say he could make every throw with consistency. It's not to say that he was accurate with every single one of those throws, but he could throw with touch. He could throw with accuracy when he was on target. He could throw with anticipation. He could throw with velocity. He could throw from different platforms. He could throw from different arm angles. And there wasn't an area of the field that he was not able to target. And that might not, obviously that sounds good, but you might think, well, a lot of top quarterbacks are like, yes, but as we've just said, a lot of top quarterbacks have that trait. There are quarterbacks, especially mid to late round quarterbacks, developmental quarterbacks that don't have the arm strength or arm talent just to be able to stand in and make every throw on the field, not with velocity, not from different arm angles. So he had the capability to make every single throw on the football field. And that is a huge thing for a young quarterback, a developmental prospect. You want that upside where he can hit every throw if he needs to. And there was zero question about that, even as far back as 2018. Number 2 on my list was that he showed impressive touch and placement. And one of the really difficult aspects of the game for some quarterbacks, not all, but some, is just changing pace. Like Jay Cutler was always a fastball guy, right? And to some extent, far through, through with touch at times, especially as he, developed. But Jay Cutler was just always a fastball guy. There's a lot of quarterbacks out there that are just fastball guys, and I'm going to throw it as hard as I can every single time. Jordan Love, showed the ability to change speeds, throw with touch, throw with placement, throw a rocket ball when he needed to. But not all quarterbacks have that either. And the fact that he had the ability to change up his speeds, throw with touch, throw with placement, once again, from different arm angles, different platforms, that was just another check in the checkbox of what he was capable of doing as a quarterback and as he was, the traits that he possessed as he tried to develop into an NFL quarterback. Number 3, in 2018, some of the concerns on his scouting reports were about his accuracy. And in 2018, I did not think accuracy was a concern. Now, he was just above the Mendoza line, which is about 60% of completions as a passer. But even in 2018, when he had a much better supporting cast, I felt like his receivers, tight ends, running backs let him down at times. There were drops. There were other plays where, just didn't develop the way that it was supposed to. Overall, as I watched Love in 2018, I thought his accuracy was no level of concern, I guess is what I would put it at. You're not turning on 2018 or any Jordan Love film and being like, this is the most accurate quarterback of all time. His accuracy is phenomenal. That's not what it is. But you turn on 2018 and you would be hard pressed to say you had any concerns with any accuracy issues on his tape. It's not, again, to say that he didn't make mistakes or didn't have an inaccurate ball here or there, but every quarterback has that in some capacity. And it never, raised to the level of a concern in 2018. So accuracy for me, even though on the scouting report it was an issue, in 2018 I didn't see it as such. Number 4, tight window throws. You're playing at Utah State, and there's going to be some tight window throws. And there was a scout in Bob McGinn's series that he did, a scout that he talked to, who made the quip of Jordan Love might be the only quarterback in history that will have wider windows in the NFL than he did in college. And you just see Jordan Love make tight window throw after tight window throw, especially in 2018, but 2019 it was prevalent as well. There's just not a ton of separation, and he had to throw receivers open. Those tight window throws are something that, in the NFL, things are going to, completely get shut down. You're going to have to throw receivers open, especially in the red zone as everything gets a bit more crowded. That's a great trait to have. And if you can show that in college, which most quarterbacks can't, it tends to lend itself to being a better quarterback in the NFL. Love had it in 2018. And again, that's just another thing that Brian Gutekunst, I'm sure, saw on tape and led him to be so intrigued by the position. Now, on the flip side, number 5 was that there were plenty of turnover-worthy plays in 2018 as well. So the big concern with Love, it was some of the regression, which we'll get to in 2019. But in 2018, his touchdown to interception ratio was 32-6. In 2019, it was 20-17. So just a totally different night and day, 12 less touchdowns, 11 more interceptions. And we'll talk about more on that in the 2019 tape. But I think the idea was that he was just flawless in 2018, and then 2019 had this sort of come to life moment. The truth is that the turnover worthy plays were there in 2018 as well. He had some very gunslinger sort of traits. He would try to do too much. He would throw the ball into some of those tight windows sometimes when he shouldn't have. And while that didn't always end up in interceptions, A lot of them should have. And those turnover worthy plays were there in 2018. It wasn't just something that it was not prevalent in 2018 and all of a sudden it developed a bad habit in 2019. Those things were there already in 18. It just didn't show up in the stat sheet. Number 6 is there were 3 types of those turnover plays. So the one was that he tried to do too much. The second was that he would stare down receivers and predetermine his throws. And number 3 was that he would get tunnel vision and he didn't really see how plays developed. Or in other cases, as I just mentioned, he would predetermine his throws and just kind of decide where he was going before the play. So that is something that, in 2018 and 2019, and I think still today in the NFL, he needs to do a better job of reading defenses, especially pre-snap. He needs to do a better job of understanding when he needs to see another down. He needs to do a better job of not staring down receivers and predetermining his throws. There were way too many plays where he was going in one specific direction and the eyes just led defenders exactly to where he was going. Sometimes his arm talent, he was able to get away with that. Other times he was not. And then again, that tunnel vision where he's locking in on a specific receiver and he's not really seeing everything that's developing around him. So if a lineman is dropping into zone coverage or a linebacker's, screaming across the field to get into his zone, he's not always seeing that because he's so laser focused in on what's going on right here. And he needs to have vision on what's going on everything. All right, how is the play developing? I don't need to look over there because I know my receiver is going to come open on the slant. So I'm going to keep everything here. I'm going to trust my feet, trust my drop, and then hit my receiver exactly where he's supposed to be because I can see ahead that there's not going to be anyone that's screaming over. There's no linemen that drop. There's no linebackers that drop. So those were things that definitely showed up in college, again in 2018, that I knew he was going to have to improve upon. Number 7 on my list is I thought his mobility was much better than I expected. He tested pretty well for a quarterback, so it wasn't like it was super shocking, but he was definitely able to get around. He was able to move in the pocket. He was able to move outside the pocket. He was able to pick up yards when it was needed. And that, that ability to sort of escape and continue, keep the play alive and make plays, it's just such a necessary trait in the NFL. And yes, there are quarterbacks that can get by. Tom Brady is an interesting one here because he's not going to make plays with his feet down the field, but he's arguably the most impressive quarterback of all time with his footwork inside the pocket. And that's just a different layer of mobility. But Love has the mobility to make plays with his feet, to, move around in the pocket, move outside of the pocket. And that was a better than I expected trait when I watched him in 2018. Also thought he had the ability to be a red zone weapon. When you combine that mobility and his running ability with the ability to put great touch on throws, throw from different platforms, different angles. He was really good at back shoulders. Like, he just showed off a lot of different big time throws, which would have led me to believe that he had the opportunity to develop into a big time red zone weapon as a quarterback in the NFL. Number 9 is he made a lot of job description throws, and that's a Ben Fennell term. But basically, your job description as a quarterback is going to at times mean that you have to take a huge hit from a linebacker or a huge hit from a defensive lineman, because if you can stand in that 1 extra second and know that your receiver is going to come open and then unleash it at the last second, take that hit, watch that ball while you're on your back, hopefully float into the arms of your wide receiver and end up in a big touchdown play. Those are job description plays. You are going to have to take some massive hits sometimes and get right back up and do it again on the next play. So he showed that. He showed that he was willing to make those job description throws and stick in the pocket, take the hit, and deliver down the field. So that's not something that all quarterbacks have. And he would pick himself up, do it the next play, and not have concerns over it. So love seeing that. He was definitely very skilled at improvisation. We talked about the mobility, but again, it's the different arm angles. It's getting out of the pocket. It's making people miss inside the pocket, keeping his eyes downfield. If the play broke down, he had the ability to keep it live with improvisation. And then number 11, he showed off the ability to get free plays and actually capitalize on them. There were some very Aaron Rodgers-esque throws in 2018 or plays in 2018 where he would get somebody to jump off sides, he would get the snap, he would immediately look downfield, and he would actually capitalize on those as well. So those were my takeaways from Jordan Love's 2018 tape. Now let's go to 2019, where, as mentioned, the regression was real. There were some reasons for that. The statistics were way, way worse. I mentioned the 32-6 touchdown ratio in 18, 20-17 touchdown to interception ratio in 19. So just a different level of play. The first thing I noticed was not only the 17 interceptions, but he had 32 overall turnover-worthy plays. and there was a major regression here. So he just put the ball in harm's way far too many times, whether that was via fumbles, whether that was via interceptions or balls that could have been intercepted. It was noticeable. And there's some things that were that led up to that, which we'll get to in just a moment as well. But that's something as a quarterback that, you just can't have happen. You have to take care of the football. It is job 1A of the quarterback. And not just that they happened, but that it was such a regression from 2018. I mentioned that the turnover worthy plays were there in 18 as well. They were, but it got even worse in 2019. That's a concern as you're developing as a quarterback. You never want to see signs of regression. As mentioned earlier, he just did not throw with vision. He needs to understand much better how plays develop. He was fooled by very simple zone concepts and not reading defenses, and he was baited far too easily as well. So that was very evident on the tape in 2019. His offense was very disjointed and the talent was missing. So he lost his top running back who was drafted. He lost his top tight end, who I believe was either drafted or was a top on draft. I think he was drafted by the Bears, if memory serves. But his offense was just very disjointed. The talent was missing. He went through a new coach, new coordinators, new everything, and the offense looked ugly. So this was not all on Jordan Love, but he was a part of it, and just nothing looked right in 2019. It never took off and looked like it did in 2018. And a lot of that was just a disjointed offense that didn't function very well, and the talent around him got way worse in 2019 than it did in 2018. And as mentioned, number 4, his supporting cast consistently let him down. A ton of drops, a ton of plays where they just didn't block for him. Jordan Love was a one-man island. He had to do almost everything on his own, and that's why sometimes where he did take the ball into his own hands and try to make plays, because he didn't have much of a choice. He was a competitor. He wanted to win, and if it ended up that he threw way more interceptions, he was going to do everything he could to try to gunsling his way back in the game. It's still not something you necessarily want to see from a scouting standpoint, but you did love his competitiveness, and you had to recognize that the talent just wasn't there in 2019. One of the things I really enjoyed was that he always remained even-keeled. Even though he was dealing with this new coordinator, new coach, new weapons around him that weren't doing everything, they were losing games at a clip that they weren't in the past. He was throwing more interceptions. He never seemed bothered. If he threw an interception, he would get back up and have the same mentality that he had on every other throw leading up to that. Just always even keeled. And I think even though we haven't seen a ton on the field from Jordan Love, I think everyone sort of has the idea that he's just this very even keeled, not, no high highs, no low lows. He's just going to be the same guy day in and day out. That was something that was very evident in college as well. Number 6, he played way too fast and, as mentioned earlier, would predetermine throws at times. So one of the things that I think got him into trouble, and probably part of this was due to his offensive line play and his receivers not getting open, but he would just play too fast. And, you would see him sort of get ahead of himself, not play within his mechanics as well in 2019. And you would also just see him, know or predetermine again where he was going with the football prior to making the play. So he just needed to calm down and let the play come to him, let the play develop, read the defense, see everything. He was more of all right, the ball's going to go here. I'm going to use my raw athletic traits to make it happen. And this is the difference between being a really good thrower of the football and being super talented and actually being a detail-oriented quarterback, right? So, I'll recap in a moment, but the biggest takeaway here is he was ultra talented at Utah State. And there were things that, especially in 2018, you watch and you would be wowed, but he was never a fully functional quarterback where you could make reads and, decide where you're going to go, look safeties off, read defenses, mid play, all of those things, go through your progressions. Those were the things that he needed to develop as a quarterback. And he was just playing way too fast in 2019. He needed to slow down and let things develop, read the plays. And I think we're still a little bit there today where he's not seen the entirety of the field and letting everything slow down and develop and then making the best read based off of that. That's quarterbacking. That's just not throwing the football. That's quarterbacking. And that was something that was missing in 2019. And I think still might be missing a little bit today. The good news is in 2019, even though he had way more interceptions, he did learn to throw the ball away more. Again, this is just part of the team sort of collapsing around him as well, but he wasn't trying to force as much. There was still a lot of forced throws, but he did also learn to live to see another down and throw the ball away more. So he was at least learning in that capacity. Number 8, there were a ton of screenplays. Over 25% of his completions in 2019 were screenplays. So even though his accuracy was down, it was buoyed by the fact that there were a ton of these really easy screen throws. And again, part of that was just based on the talent around him and that they couldn't let plays develop as much. But that was a little bit of a concern that so many of his plays in 2019 were screen completions. Number 9 was his accuracy just was not the same. I mentioned that the accuracy was not a concern in 2018. It was in 19. There were plays that he just missed. And this goes back to playing too fast and letting his mechanics take care of themselves. Part of it was the talent around him, but a lot of it wasn't. There were plays where receivers were open and he just wasn't as accurate with the football in 2019 as he was in 2018. And again, you hate to see any level of regression there. My other note was that I thought defensive coordinators were going to have options against him. The first would be that you want to make him go 80 yards without making a mistake. Play 2 safety deep and make it so that he can't connect on big throws down the field, which is one of his strengths, and make him go without throwing an interception or fumbling the ball 80 yards down the field or making a mistake. And the other thing I mentioned is if I were a defensive coordinator, until he proved that he could do it, I would bring a ton of pressure and run a bunch of zone defense on him. And guess what happened in that game in Kansas City during his first start? Tons and tons and tons of pressure, and Jordan Love didn't have an answer for it. Part of it is that his offensive coordinator and coaches and Matt LaFleur and everyone else didn't do a great job of putting him in a good position. But part of it was exactly that scouting report. Blitz the heck out of him until he figures out how to navigate it. And he didn't in that game. And that's something that I think defensive coordinators are going to continue to have options with moving forward. Number 11, he played almost entirely out of shotgun, so he was going to have to learn how to play under center and learn all of the different nuances of that. And then number 12 was that he did show trust in his receivers, even though the talent level was down and he was playing at Utah State, he trusted his receivers to go up and make a play. He would put the ball where he would give them an opportunity and hope that they'd come down with it. A lot of times, unfortunately, they didn't, but he showed a lot of trust in his wide receivers, which I appreciated as well. So in total, as mentioned, I think the biggest recap that I can give is he was very, very talented. And I can 100% see why a team would fall in love with the talent and believe that with the right coaching and following Aaron Rodgers and being able to see how he navigates not turning the ball over and all those sort of things that you would see this, again, potential lottery ticket that could pay off huge for you. And because of that, I don't hate the pick. Sometimes those things just don't turn out. And I'm not saying it won't. We have time left to see what's going to happen with Jordan Love, but I understand the pick, even if it's not what I would have done myself. And I think that is a really good lesson of there are times where an NFL general manager is going to take a risk on something and it's just not going to work out. Inherently, that's okay. I make the joke about this with the Bucks, but I'm not sure in how John Hammond was doing things. I'm not sure without Ejian Leon and without a Joe Alexander and without all of these, even like a Brandon Jennings to some extent, without these high risk, high reward philosophies, I'm not sure they ever end up with Giannis. They went pick after pick after pick of taking the guy arguably with the highest upside, that if he turned out, he had the opportunity to be a insanely talented all-star level player. And that was with Jennings and Ejian Leon and Joe Alexander. And you know what? Jennings didn't ultimately end up really turning out the way that they hoped. Joe Alexander was a complete bust. Ejian Leon was a complete bust. But along the way, they got Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was going to be one of the greatest NBA players of all time. They kept taking the guy with the highest upside until it paid off. And Brian Gutekunst, in some capacity, has shown a home run swing. And he showed a home run swing with Jair, with Rashawn Gary, with Jordan Love, with Eric Stokes. We'll kind of see how this recent draft plays out. But I think even Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt, to some extent, especially Quay Walker, was a bit of a home run swing based on upside, but also lack of production. These are high risk, high reward players. And it paid off with everyone so far. We don't know how this year's picks will, but it paid off so far, everyone except for Love. And that's okay. By using that philosophy, they got Rashawn Gary, they got Jair Alexander, they got Eric Stokes in their first pick every round. And yeah, you know what? They got Jordan Love too, and he might not work out. He might. We don't know yet. But even if he doesn't, I can understand the philosophy. I can understand the decision-making process. And sometimes it's okay to get that wrong. He took a risk. There was a high reward. It didn't pay off. You move on. They kept Aaron Rodgers, and they were able to keep his contract. In the meantime, Rodgers plays back-to-back MVP level seasons. This did not work out terribly for Green Bay, even if Love busts and never plays it down again for the Packers. Sometimes that's okay. The philosophy has worked more often than not. And I think sometimes that's, it's okay to understand the vision, even if the vision didn't turn out. And ultimately, Brian Gutekunst will be judged by how his overall vision works out with everything. Every team's going to miss on some draft picks. There are like 4 or 5 first-round picks in that draft that are already either out of the league. There's at least 3 that are out of the league, if not 4. But there's also 2 more that have already been traded to different teams and a bunch of crazy stuff. So Jordan Love is by far not even the worst pick in the first round of that draft. So it happens. And like I said, we'll still see. But this was the scouting report for Jordan Love. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll continue to monitor him, and we're really excited to see what he can do in training camp and preseason. And he still has a level of, I'm very curious to see how he's going to turn out. Whether that's with Green Bay or some other team down the road, we will just still have to wait and see. Thanks so much for joining me today. Always appreciate it. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.